Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're going to get started in just a short moment, just letting everybody come into the webinar. We have an amazing amount of people registered for today's webinar from all over the world. We have Nigeria, Germany, India, Canada, US, in so many different time zones that I felt it was only appropriate to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, since I don't know everybody's time zone. And it's exciting to have you all with us here today. We're going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart as a former MSP. How do you pitch your ideal partner? Because I tell you, I've gotten so many different pitches that say to me most often they don't even know who the heck I am and what I'm selling. So let's get started right now and go through what we're going to be talking about. As I said, my name is Laura Steward. I am the Director of Online Channel Events for SaaSMAX and a former MSP. So after 15 years of running a multi-state IT company, I can tell you I've been pitched by thousands upon thousands of potential vendors. What we're going to be talking about today is, first I'm going to introduce our two speakers. We're going to talk about what is an ideal partner and what a data-driven ideal partner profile looks like. Because, and here is the big thing, you can pitch all you want, but if you're not pitching to the right partner, I don't think it really matters, because you're going to have the wrong partners on board. So we're going to talk through that. Then we'll talk about what makes a great pitch, Rajiv's wonderful patented process called KPASA, leveraging data to stand out, and some special offers we have for all of you today. So let's bring our speakers on board. And we've got Dina Moskowitz, the CEO and founder of SaaSMAX, and somebody who I have to tell you is so passionate about making sure that you have the right partners. Dina, welcome today. And
Hi.
we have Rajiv Nathan. He is the CEO of Startup Hypeman. And I have to tell you about Rajiv. If you see the word startup there, please, please, please do not think that this is only targeted to startups. Because what I know about him is he helps you think like a startup. And that's what businesses at every level need. So thank you both for being here. And Dina, thanks
for having me.
running this and sponsoring this whole event.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a fun conversation from the rehearsals we've had so far. And Raj, it's great to bring you to our community of the channel, because I think that having the type of energy and background and experience you bring to us will be really valuable.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you. I was contemplating when I brought the camera on if I should have showed up like I was on that previous slide. Like,
yeah, just stay there. We should all go like that.
I happen to love that photo because from what I've seen of you, that is truly who you are. Like, let's get you so excited that you're just not in their faces in a bad way, but like, hey!
Yeah. As my wife likes to say, why you always got to be so extra about everything?
Well, and it's actually to the point of how I met Raj in the first place, was that I got, about a year ago, maybe more, I got a LinkedIn message from him, cold call, right? Cold email, cold LinkedIn message. And it had a link to a video that he created of him doing a startup rap song. And I watched the startup rap song, and it got my attention. And with, like you, Laura, I get pitched by thousands of SaaS vendors and partners and everything in between, and so tired of being pitched. But because he sent that video and it was clever and relevant, and I'm not saying that's what we're here to talk about, is how to create a rap video, but I was so impressed with him and his depth and how he persuaded me that I reached out to him, and we developed a rapport and a friendship and a business relationship. And I'm happy to be able to now have him come into the channel to show what, who it is I've been talking about.
Wow, thank you for saying that.
Yep, so let's dive right in, okay? Let's start with something that I think is so important, because we can speak all day about the pitch, right? But as I said earlier, if you're not pitching to the right people, what does it matter? So I want to start out with a poll as we go into our first topic. And the poll is, what is your top partner attribute? What do you think your top partner attribute is? And Dina and Rajiv, why is it so important to know what the ideal is for your partners? Dina, you want
Dina,
to
I'll
start?
let you lead on that one.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you that if you get inundated with noise from people that are the wrong vendor, the wrong product, the wrong solution, you turn off. And you're, as a vendor, you're wasting a lot of time. So knowing what your top partner attribute gives you probably the love language that you want to start talking to them with. And so understanding how they're aligned with you and if they have the right set of characteristics. Well, actually, here you go, our slide about ideal.
Bringing that back
But I
up
guess,
for you, Dina.
sure, yeah. So the ideal is, what is your standard of excellence and perfection, right? Who is that perfect partner? And you want them to have the attributes that make them successful in selling to your same ideal customer. So you want to have an ideal customer, but also an ideal partner. And it looks like from these results that the solutions they focus on is the number one. And I'm really glad they say that, because I do agree. First of all, sometimes people say, well, I only can work with a reseller or a channel partner that is of a certain size. Well, that's not really some of these partners can be very small, but have the best relationships with the right customers for you, and you don't want to ignore that. So I'm glad to see that most people said solutions and services, because it truly is. They need to have the right expertise, because if they do, then they're talking to the right customer buyer that you want them to be talking to, and they have the right ability to help them with your product. So, what we did here.
Before you go on, Dina and Rajiv, on that, the responses, 11% said they had no idea what their top criteria is. And that surprised me, but it didn't. I actually thought it would be a little bit higher based on how I've been approached in 15 years, and my friends have been approached. So I look at
Well,
this
here
and
you go.
saying 59% solutions, you've got the vertical markets, yet there are 11% that are admitting they don't know. Rajiv, what do you think about that?
Well, I think so. What Dina said is obviously important, and I think even like a larger ripple effect of either not knowing what your ideal attributes are, or perhaps going off the wrong thing and sending to the wrong partners, is there's even like a brand impact that's at stake here. Because if you're sending, say, the right message, but to the completely wrong person, it reflects on your brand. And you know what? People share things that tick them off, or that don't hit their ear the right way. So now you become this like forwarded email of, oh man, look at this I got today. This is terrible, right? And you definitely don't want to be in that camp. So if you don't want to like go off the wrong attributes, or you don't want to not know what is ideal for you. And if you're in that camp who just has no idea, well, you've got to look at the alignment of the values of your company in terms of goals and target market, and then values of potential partner, and see where's the overlap to find your best fit. And I think that's, Dina, I think that's kind of a layup for what you're about to speak to here, if I'm right.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that you might think you know what solutions they need to have, but you don't always know, because they're bigger. Typically the company set of solutions is not something that you're studying when you purchase a list, or you go to a conference, or you're you just are reaching out to a company, or whatever it may be, from like a webinar, and they come in. And in the past, there's been no real way except manually to go to their website and to detail, spend a lot of time trying to learn and understand who they are and what they sell. And it's a really frustrating thing to have to do on your own. So I mean, really what we do as in Partner Optimizer, which is our platform for partner discovery, is we created this data mining tool because we needed to help vendors find the right partners. That's what we've been doing as SaaSMAX. And when you look at all those different criteria, are they offering and working with adjacent products that are complementary to yours? Are they offering competitive ones? If they're competing, are they too loyal to that competitor to where it's going to be a waste of your time to try to sway them over, right? Or are they offering enough of them that it looks like maybe they want to work with multiple products in your category? Are they hitting up the right verticals? Do they have the right customer size? Are they the right business model? Like if they're a e-commerce platform or a store, are they the same as a cybersecurity expert? Just because they're both selling cybersecurity products? Probably not, and probably different how you'd work with them. So all of these different attributes make a big difference. And so what we're showing here actually is that when you start to look at partner profiling and using that to discover what your most successful partners look like, you can learn a lot, and you can learn their love language as well, learn what they're talking about, and learn whether or not they match with your love language, and whether, you know, whether you want to match with them. And we've been able to look very specifically at the differences between a managed security service provider and a managed service provider and just a security consultant. You know, that's how deep you can get. And ones that are focused on enterprise are going to offer different products and solutions than ones that offer an SMB solution. So the deeper you go, the more you learn, and the more specific you can be in how you talk to them. And it's interesting because a month ago we did a really cool conversation with Randy Farbach from Log Me In, and he talked about how from the discovery that we did with him, his team was able to have better conversations with the partners they were having and that we found for them, and they had a 40% conversion versus 2 to 3% typically. And so this is really a great segue to Raj, because you know we talk about this a lot in terms of ideal partners and pitching. And imagine if once you knew which partner was the right one, right, based upon their partner company attributes first and foremost, because you don't want to waste time just because you know someone who works at a partner company and you like them, it doesn't mean they have the right business for you. So once you know that the partner company has the right attributes that match your ideal profile, that's the chance for you now to go and figure out how to pitch them and talk to them with the optimal messaging, and to get in the door with them easier and faster. And that's what happened when Raj reached out to me, was that he reached out to me with a message that was meaningful to me at the time, and it was based upon knowing that we were doing some capital raising, for example. So it made sense and I paid attention. But in this case, when you have all this information about a partner and you have the insight into them, you can study this. And Raj, now's your turn. So like, how do we turn this into a really ideal pitch? Because you know these are the perfect partners for you, much better than the ones that match 24%. You have,
and Raj, I'm going to throw
like
up
10
a poll.
seconds to
Sorry
get
about
that.
that, Dina. I'm going to throw
Good,
up
okay.
a poll
Cool.
to get us set up for what Raj is going to talk about, because this is
Great.
such a critical piece. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm really curious as to what our numbers are going to show up with this poll. And Raj, why don't you talk about this poll that's up on the screen and why it's so critical on the focus?
Definitely. So what we got here is, where does your partner pitch mostly focus? Is it your company? Is it your partner? Is it their clients? Or perhaps you don't necessarily know, and it's changing on the fly based on the situation or based on how you feel that day. This kind of comes back to what we said earlier, and actually the first poll, which is like, where do you focus and what attributes are important to you, and all the data that Dina just showed. You got to have relevance at the end of the day, right? If you're not relevant to the people you're reaching out to, why should they care? And that's where figuring out what that pitch should be is a combination of knowing who they are, knowing what you have to provide, knowing what the end offer is, the value kind of on all fronts, and knowing how that relates to them specifically based on the attributes you're pulling. And so it looks like the resounding focus here is their clients, with some people saying, I don't know, and focusing on their own company. And we're mostly split between the partner's clients and your specific partner. And I think if that's what you answered, you're generally speaking, you're in the right direction with this. And that's how we want to be thinking about this. Now, before I kind of go into this whole slide here and everything that comes after it, I'm curious to know if we could use the chat here. If everyone who's watching, can you just let us know, like what's your responsibility or your title at your company? Because I want to make sure we're able to speak relevant to your specific role. So just let us know what role you play at your company or what's your title. And as that's coming in, and you can use the chat window for that, as that's coming in, let's talk about the mindset that you need. So I want you to reframe how you're thinking about reaching out to your partners, connecting with them, and communicating with them. Most people, especially in the business world, what we do is we think like executives. We think like salespeople. We perhaps think like entrepreneurs. We think very businessy. What you want to do instead is think like an entertainer. And the reason that I say that is because the entertainer is solely focused on their audience. And they are solely focused on making it a great experience for their audience. They have one thought in mind, one question in mind. How do I elicit an emotional response from this crowd? How do I make a connection with them? How do I get them to leave this arena buzzing about something in particular? And that's why when they hit the stage, they have a set list they play off of. When the performer hits the stage, they don't ask the crowd how you're doing tonight, and everyone says, I'm doing amazing. And then that's followed by, okay, great. Well, check it out. Tonight, we're going to play every song that we've ever put out in our catalogs, not just the greatest hits that you came for, but also everything cover to cover on all 10 albums that we have created. And not just the album releases, but also the B-sides and the draft files we've been working on in our garage. That a couple of notes are off. We're not really sure how those work yet, but it's all really, really important to us. And we promise you're going to love it because it's really important to us. It's going to take about 25 hours to get through it all. Are you with me? Kind of fall flat if that's what they went out with, right? They would be the audience, the fans would be like immediately looking at their watch and wondering how fast, like how long is this going to take? Is it really going to be that long? And I need to get home and eat dinner or feed my kids, right? That's not how the entertainer thinks. So the entertainer has a set list they go off of because they fundamentally understand what every one of us should understand, which is that you need to see and speak from your audience's point of view. Now, another way you can think about that, fun graphic here, is Super Mario, for those of you who remember this game. And I think this really maps it out well. So you have the small Mario, and that's your potential customer, or in this case, think about it as your potential partner. Then you have the fire flower. That represents your product. When you combine those two things together, you get Big Mario on fire shooting fireballs and killing bad guys. Now, that's the awesome person who can do rad stuff. That is what you're selling here. You're selling the ideal version of your partner and their end customer. You're not selling your product. Most companies focus on the flower. They focus on their product, the features it has, and perhaps like the awards that it has won. Instead, what we really need to be intently focusing on is how do you make them look good? How do you make your partner look good? How do you show you provide value to their end customer? Because the more we do that, the more we are in that think like an entertainer perspective of seeing and speaking from the audience's point of view. We make it about them and we make it less about us. Now, I just want to pause here. Go ahead, Laura.
I was hoping you would take a pause here because we've gotten a number of responses, not in the chat, but in the question pane to your answer of what titles we're dealing with. And I think this will fit nicely with, I think, where you're headed with this. We've got VPs of channels, partner alliance managers, director of sales. We've got co-founders of the companies, channel chiefs, managing directors, channel sales and partner managers.
Awesome.
So that that's also like a different conversation, right? With you're talking about here, looking at this slide, which I love, and I used to play Super Mario way too much way back then. How does that also fit from the level of person that you're talking from and to inside as you're talking about, think like an entertainer?
Yeah, so if you think about the person who's trying to connect, so let's say you're that, the VP of channel sales, or you're the partner manager at your company, what you need to do is really think about what's your team strategy here, right? If you're not the one who's individually doing it, you've got to think about what's the team strategy and how do we make sure our team is putting their best foot forward and creating an overall sort of like market message that aligns with this. Obviously, there's going to be some nuance with the individual channel reps based on their own personality, and that's okay. But that should that should be nuance. Like nuance shouldn't be the standard, or it shouldn't be like the bulk. There should be some aligned message that you say, hey, this is what we're going to our partner teams with. This is what we're going to prospective partners with. And now take this message and add your own flavor to it based on your personality. I think what happens a lot of times is it's kind of the other way around. It's like every rep just kind of decides, well, I'm going to do what works for me. And it doesn't really matter to me what the company's level is doing, but you got to think about how you're representing your product and your brand overall in the market. Because sure, you could get interest, but I think a truly successful partner program, if you think about like all the way through to execution, is from brand level to brand level, you're working together. You're not having, a couple spokes of this wheel like off over here, but the wheel itself is over here, right? So I don't know if that's the right visual with my hands for it, but I think you get what I'm saying here, where you can't just necessarily have each person thinking, well, I'll do what works for me and everything else be damned. It's more, what's the company message we're putting forth, and then how do you tailor from there?
That's really great. I know, Dina, you and I have both seen this, and it fits right in with this Batman slide. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's 100% on brand?
Exactly.
Every single person inside the Batman organization knows exactly what Batman stands for. So I'm going to let you go into that, because I think it's such a critical component to where we're leading to, from Dina having talked about finding the right partners and how you're going to craft that conversation now. Because you can have a list of 10,000 perfect partners, but it doesn't matter if you can't close the next piece.
Of course. So if we think about what's that pitch you want to have to them, what's that message? Go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that anyone who thinks they have 10,000 perfect partners shouldn't be here right now. That's not going to happen. So maybe a
really
few
good
hundred,
point,
right?
But
Yeah.
they do feel that way a lot, right? And
well, sometimes in our jobs as channel chiefs, right, and channel managers, we're being measured by how many partners we get in, because not enough of our partners are active, right? And so so we keep thinking, well, maybe we need to replace them with more and find the right ones and go after the spray and pray methodology, because it just you haven't been able to hone in and figure out which ones are perfect for you in the first place. So on brand, and that's the whole circular thing here, is that as soon as you start talking beyond your ideal partner, that is where you're compromising your brand and compromising your channel partner program as well. So back to you, Batman.
Well, and I think ideal is the operative word there, right? You can have partners, but what you want is ideal partners. And generally speaking, to your point of like, well, if you think you got 10,000, even if you think you have 500 already, or whatever the number might be, generally speaking, just the way bias works, we tend to always think we're doing a better job at the things than we actually are. Whatever our thing might be, we tend to think we can lift more weight than we actually can. That's why we pick up that table and we hurt our back, right? So always keep in mind that we have this perception that we're doing a better job than we really are, and that's why it's so important to focus on a lot of these fundamentals to put ourselves in the right place and make sure we're reaching out to the right people with the right message. So let's think about, how do we craft that message? How do we craft that pitch? And to me, it starts with understanding your positioning, right? Like, what's your positioning relative to your end market, your end customers, and how does that impact how your how your partners would care? And what I like, the model I like to use for this is what I call the superhero positioning strategy. So the idea here is you've got to look at your offering, you've got to look at your brand as a superhero. Why? Because superheroes help and save people. What does your product do? It helps and saves a certain subset of the market from something that they're currently experiencing. Now, I like to use Batman as the example because if we look at Batman, if you know anything about the Batman story, Batman doesn't have like mythical things about him, or there's no like whatever. It's just someone who took access to capital and combined it with technology, and then use those two things to serve the public good, which I would say is probably representative of everyone on this call, taking access to capital, combining it with technology, and serving the public good. Now, what would be cool is if you could use the chat, so not the question pane, because I can't see that part, but if you could use the chat window, it's like the next little pane below that, and just go in there and let me know, generally speaking, like what's happening that makes Batman come in and save the day. And you can even use the graphics on this slide as an example. But what do you know is happening that makes Batman put on the bat suit and swoop in and save the day? Go ahead and use the chat window for that. As opposed to the question window, and I'll be able to see it.
I want to say
it. Well, go ahead, Dina. I'll give you an opportunity here.
No, let's let the audience. It's more fun, less predictable.
So while that's coming,
the chat window isn't enabled, so put it into the question pane at this point. Then sorry about that, everybody. I'm showing the chat's enabled. I don't know why you're not seeing it.
Oh, my bad. Well then, Laura, let me know as questions are coming in.
Okay, and I'll move to the next slide.
Yeah. So there's a good chance you probably said something like bad stuff is happening, right? You probably said maybe the Joker has blown up the hospital, or the bank is being robbed, or someone's getting mugged on the street, right? Crime, that's what's going on. There's some bad thing at play here. That's when Batman puts on the bat suit and swoops in and saves the day. If it's like a beautiful day outside and people have their kids at the park, they're taking their dog for a walk, you don't see Batman swoop in and be like, "Whoa, I'm gonna save you." Because it would be like the creepiest thing ever if that's what happened. If there's not a care in the world and Batman comes in and says, "I'm here to save you." However, what I often find is companies are pitching their products being Batman on a sunny day. They are driving straight into, here are the amazing things about us, so here's why you should partner with us, right? And that's swooping in and saving the day when Gotham, when the city does not need saving. So when we think about defining our positioning, and this is an internal exercise you do, what the superhero positioning strategy states is the following. We can go to the next slide. In order for a superhero to exist, AKA you, your product, your brand, there have to be three things in place first. Number one is you need a person in distress. When you have that, then there can be a core village on fire. Once you've identified the village on fire, then guess what? A superpower of some kind can be activated. And with the superpower activated, then the superhero can come in and save the day. Or if we think about this in communication and business speak, your person in distress is your target audience. The village on fire is the core problem they are experiencing. The superpower is your approach to that problem, and the superhero is ultimately your solution. Now, I would imagine one of the immediate questions that come out of this is, well, is my target audience my target partner, or is it the end target customer and their end customer? And the answer is, in this specific use case, it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid of both. So you want to, of course, you want to know who the end customer is, but you can only know that once you've identified your ideal partners. And so knowing who your ideal partners are, then you can look at, okay, who do they sell to, and what does that end customer have going on for them? What does your partner address, but what's probably still missing because your partner doesn't address that? A good way you can think about target audience here is, I don't have a slide for this, but just visualize a funnel where at the top of the funnel, you have these people. The layer beneath that is have this problem. Underneath that is causing this feeling. and below that is at this time. These people have this problem causing this feeling at this time. And then the output of that is therefore they want to feel blank. They want to feel a certain way in a world where all of this is solved for them. Right? So if you map that out, what you're able to do is, like, if you, for example, if you use Partner Optimizer, in that these people thing at the top, everything you pull out of Partner Optimizer that's relevant to you goes into that these people top part of the funnel. And then from there, you could say, all right, what's the need? What is the need that exists here? Okay. This is an internal exercise. Whenever I do this with companies, whatever we create here is not meant for external facing communication. It's to understand what's our positioning relative to the market, and so that we can create external facing messaging. If you do this on your own, just create take out a piece of paper, open up a document, just create 4 columns, start bullet pointing out each, items under each of these. Don't worry about how it sounds. Just get the ideas out of your head, get the knowledge out, use your Partner Optimizer tool to understand what's going to be relevant here. From that, what we can do is develop a clear pitch. And the formula I'm going to hit you with in just a second is designed to be super easy to remember and really simple to, in theory, it's really simple, but it's so powerful when you use it, even though it's so simple. And the formula here is, I'll go to Laura or Dina here. Do you know any Spanish that you might know what que pasa means?
What's up?
Exactly.
What's happening?
Exactly. What's up
happening?
or what's
That was a
happening?
great TV show. I used to love to watch that. I'm showing.
Love that. So your que pasa elevator pitch, right? When you think about how do you reach out to a prospective partner, you want to follow the que pasa model. Now, this is an acronym, and what we're saying here is, like, you want to just tell people what's up with the company, what's up with the situation. So PASA is our acronym, which stands for problem, approach, solution, action. Problem, approach, solution, action. Problem, approach, solution, action. Maybe for the sake of just doing it in chorus, perhaps Laura and Dina, you can join in with me and we'll say it together, all 3 of us.
All right,
1,
ready?
2, 3.
Problem,
Approach.
solution,
Solution,
action.
Action.
and we got through it, lags and all.
Gotta love all the different delays on all the internet on that one.
It's only 3 of us. If it was like 30 of us, you can imagine how awesome the delays are with that. Someone's like saying action while someone else is getting started on problem. Now,
well, I think that's perfect though, if I may, Rajiv. That's a perfect sort of example of what happens though, because there is a delay or there is a mismatch in the action statement or the definition of each of the different acronyms that you're talking about. So problem, approach, solution, or action. If there's a delay at one level of a company to helping define how you're going to put that out there, I've seen that on my end go, wait, you're saying this and you're saying that. And a week from now, I know you're going to tell me something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it so important? And how can somebody be sure that all levels are together on this? I mean, let me throw a question in that somebody asked, because I think it's really relevant. It says here, how would you help a SaaS vendor launch first ever channel program? We're 22 years old, financially sound, but CEO is not all in to driving sales indirectly. So we are starting with a referral problem. It's like they want to, but they don't, but they want to, but they don't.
Well, Dina, I'll let you speak to this, but my initial take is you got to be bought in from like an executive level if you want this to be successful.
Yeah. And that's sort of, it's actually going a little off message, because what you want to do is figure out, it's more of an ROI analysis, because if you can show your CEO that each partner can bring you 20 or 30 or 50 new deals, and each of those transactions is worth a certain amount to you, and it's a numbers thing from a CEO perspective. Typically, you want to try to approach it in that direction. Once you get that buy-in, then we can go into who those ideal partners are. Now, if those ideal partners are also your customers, maybe it makes sense to get started and have some of those customers start to be partners so that you can show their success, and then you can have that feed up to the CEO. But it's really hard if you don't get the buy-in from the top level down. I understand your pain. We hear that a lot.
But I do think that probably provides opportunity to say, hey, CEO, we've actually identified 100 companies we could go to market with that it appears would be very good matches with us. Why don't we start there? If it's unsuccessful, we don't have to keep going, but why don't we start there?
Well, and here's the thing. What would be the PASA that this channel executive would say to his CEO?
Yeah, there you go. You could literally use, like, this model is really designed to like pitch anything. So you could pitch your CEO.
Why it fit, because you have to have an internal PASA before you go external, correct?
Yeah, and even, I built this formula really to be like, hey, if you need to get an idea across, like, leverage this to the extent that there's a decent chance when I really get serious about trying to convince my wife that we should get a dog, I'm gonna do a K-PASA pitch to her to say we really need to get a dog. So let me just explain why this makes sense for a second, and then we'll show an example one. The reason why this is effective and why it works is because, so remember, most companies are trying to be Batman on a sunny day and save the day. So they're jumping straight to solution. They're saying, we have this award-winning software 4 years in a row now, and it's got these different credibility points to it, and it's going to make you a lot of money. But you know what? Like, everyone has the best product ever. Everyone has the best award-winning software. Everyone has the great opportunity. So the way you make it relevant to them, when you lead with problem, what you're doing is providing context and frame of reference, but most importantly, you're leading with empathy. You're relating to them first. You're kind of putting yourself in their shoes, and then using that to say, that's why we think what we have here could actually make sense for you. So the way you want to think about this from a partner perspective is develop what's that value proposition, what's that pitch to the end customer, and then how do you rope that into making it also relevant to your partner. So here's an example with a company I've worked with called SearchSpring. This is the elevator pitch to their end customer. Hey, we talk to e-commerce teams every day who tell us they're spinning their wheels trying to get their products to show up the way they want them to. The search bar pulls up incorrect items and doesn't account for spelling errors, and merchandising is a manual slog. SearchSpring gives them total control over their site to make products more findable and boost conversion rates without their team having to take on the heavy lifting. Websites running our search and merchandising toolkit showcase the right product to the right customer at the right time. Learn more at searchspring.com. Right, so that's the idea of how you present this to the end customer. Now, if you're going to take this and you want to convince a partner that what you have is worth them adopting, you're going to take this and make like a hybrid where you speak to, hey, here's what we're hearing from end customers like yours. Here's what we're hearing from customers like yours about their e-commerce platform, about what they're dealing with e-commerce. And if you're using Partner Optimizer and you've pulled the right attributes, what you can do is tailor the message to the partner's specific use case and talk about how you recognize what they do well for their customers, but are they hearing gaps in their conversations, right? Are they hearing about how, even though, whatever they do is great work with the customer, are they also hearing how they're having issues with the merchandising, with the search bar, et cetera? Because if so, what we have is something that can help you give them total control over their site. And what they'll be able to do, what you'll be able to enable them to do, is showcase right product to right customer at the right time. And so what you need to be able to really execute that successfully is knowledge of the partner, to be able to contextualize this K-PASA to their use case and to give them something that they can say, this really might make sense for us to champion to our customers.
That leads to a couple of questions that I've been seeing coming in, Raj. How important do you think success stories are? I know from my former MSP experience and from some consulting I've done with some other MSPs that some of them like it, some of them don't. But is there a sweet spot on how to present a success story so it doesn't sound like you're just artificially touting in your pitch?
That's a really good question. So kudos to whomever wrote that as a question in the panel there. I've got a couple different answers for this. Number one is when we think about the initial outreach. So there's one way you can talk about customer success there. In the initial outreach, this is going to sound counterintuitive, so people don't let your minds explode when I say this. I wrote an ebook on this a couple years ago, and then a couple months ago, actually, it was backed up by data from another company, and totally independent of my stuff, which was just crazily aligned. But when you start throwing amazing ROI numbers, amazing stats out in that outreach, it's actually going to backfire on you. Because what happens when you do that, in most cases, is I like to call it, you activate someone's yeah, but brain, like yeah, comma, B-U-T. They say, yeah, I see, you got, 80% lift for this partner, but we're different. Or, but that could never work for us. Or, but what did you have to fudge to make that look good? So rather than focusing on that, I call it the X to Y paradox, which is that like your partner is in a state of X, like variable X today. And when you throw a great ROI number out there, you are positioning a state of Y, the letter Y, and that's just too far of a gap from X. So instead, what you want to do is what I call the X+1 effect. So can you show an amount of like incremental gain that a partner may have experienced? And more than anything, can you talk about a qualitative result that they may have experienced? Because again, everyone talks about how 50% sales lift, added this much to order value or ticket, et cetera. So instead, talk about some sort of qualitative gain. And then after you say the qualitative gain, add on a number. But instead of being like the amazing number, I say pick something that shows like, hey, in the first couple months, they've experienced this amount of lift. So the person can visualize like what immediate success might look like, not what 1 year from now success might look like. That was a long-winded answer. If we have time, I can give how do you present it when you're in like an actual conversation once you've done a successful outreach.
Please go ahead, because I think that's important. I loved your idea of showing the incremental, because I know I've gotten pitched many times, and I still do, and I don't even have an MSP anymore, which makes me laugh even more. And they'll go, well, you can this person made $10 million or $1 million or $300,000. It's like, well, they were a partner for 4 years before that happened. So it sets up, an unrealistic expectation. I'm starting at my spot 1. You're giving me an example of somebody step 1,000.
Yeah. And like you said, it sets up an unrealistic expectation. And I'm sure your reaction was I'm sure you had a yeah, but reaction, right? Where
massive.
Right?
Actually, I didn't use those words, but yeah.
Sure,
but
the idea of it, yeah.
Yeah, like typically also, they don't know enough about you and your clients to be able to say that they could deliver that same return to you. So it's almost like they need to have more of a due diligence with you and build a rapport with you before they could even make that claim, right?
Yeah.
And Rajiv, I'd love to have you give that example, but I just noticed what time it is, and I want to make sure we get through a few more of these questions that people have, and then we can go into, it might lead into some more of the questions. I think this might be more of a Dina question, but Raj, I think it fits you as well. How would you approach an established program that has spent months and years catering to a profile that wasn't the right fit? Where do you start, and how do you phase out non-ideal partners and change your conversation? I mean, how do you present changing that conversation? Not even midstream, it's very established according to this. Who'd like to start?
I think it's a two-part answer. It's a Dina and Raj answer. So
Yes.
part one is to say, well, you must have some that are successful, because otherwise you wouldn't have a partner program in place still. So I'd say send over those partners' domain names, and let's profile them, and let's look at what those successful partners have most in common, and validate that that is perhaps your ideal partner profile. Or maybe you want to tweak it further. So once you have a better view of who those ideal active partners are from an attribute standpoint, then you can decide, and you can see how many additional partners out there exist that look like them, and maybe you want to start recruiting some of those new ones and test the waters. And for that, testing the waters, you don't want to use the same old pitch, because it's obviously attracting the wrong partners instead of the right partners. So let's look at what we learn in that profile, and then we build a new KPASA message for them, which you then take directly to them. And that's where I would say also consider talking to your partners directly, or talking to those ones you're recruiting and the best ones directly, rather than let an outside service initially do any nurturing or recruiting for you, because you want to hear their voice. You want to hear what's connecting and what's not, and you know what's a turnoff and what's not, and then what's actually catching them, and how you know who they are. And Rajiv, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think that kind of covers, I would say, the entirety of it. If you're trying to pivot to different channel partners, you got to look at, okay, well, who is our ideal partner? What's going to be relevant? Who's their customer base? What's going to be relevant to this partner based on their customer base, right? And I don't mean to simplify it so much like that, but if you really think about like a process lens, that it can be as simple as that. Messaging will take a little bit of time to figure out, but if you just break it out as that 3-step process, the undertaking of it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, and let me just say too, is that you're not alone, whoever's asking that question, because the partner landscape is changing all the time. And even right now, the partner landscape is growing with so many more domain experts coming in as either referral partners or influencers. And some partners are leaving the landscape. And your technology or your product that you're selling has probably, at least I hope it has, modernized and requires new sets of skills and is hitting up different markets and customer types. And so I would suggest that in the least every year, your team of stakeholders, both your sales and your channel and your marketing people, get together and say, how has our ideal customer changed? And therefore, how has our ideal partner changed? And what do they look like today? Do an audit today and do an audit every 6 months or a year. And it's easy to do when it comes to data-driven, to see what new terms are surfacing and what's becoming the important conversation.
All right, let's jump into another question, because they're coming in quite fast and furiously here. Does LinkedIn email outreach differ how you approach your messaging with partner recruitment outreach?
Oh, this is a good question.
That's a good
So
one.
it's funny, actually, on saleshacker.com, there was a similar discussion question a couple weeks ago, and I wrote a really lengthy response to that that I didn't intend to, but I just started typing, and I was like, well, here's everything you need to know. So here's the thing with using the LinkedIn messaging platform. It's so oversaturated by people who have really bad pitches that you've got to be really good for people to pay attention to it. So a couple things you got to keep in mind here are the medium itself, which is, it's a little bit different than email in that most people are viewing the message in like a chat window that's like a tiny corner in the bottom right of their screen. And I can't tell you the number of pitches I will get where someone's first message requires 4, 5, 6 scrolls to get through it all. And if that's the case, there's no way I'm reading that. So you've got to think about, how do you parse out your message in a way that's more easily readable? So no like thick, chunky paragraphs, like 2-sentence paragraphs max, but also in a way that maybe you like parse it out so it becomes conversational, right? Like your initial message is meant to open a conversation where you can then explain more through a series of back and forth. There's also in-mail, which I think is horribly misused as well, because the amount of in-mails you get that I'm sure you've received it yourselves. I've received them myself, where it's just like, great new opportunity is like the subject line. And then it goes into, we have an award-winning, or kind of that same style of pitch that's super long. Now, people usually view in-mails in like the bigger view, so you have a little bit more real estate to play with, but you still don't want to make it that pitch that's about yourself. I think what's most important here is to look at, how do you say something that's going to be different than what everyone else is getting. And I had a lot of success actually literally making the subject line of the in-mail, not another in-mail, ... And then the opening line was, I was like, I hate getting in-mails myself, but you know what? Every now and then they make a cool connection. I wanted to reach out because looked at your profile and saw these things, and then kind of go through a K-pasa from there. And that was a really successful way to do in-mail. But I literally just called out the fact that it's an in-mail up front, and that's what allowed the message to get through.
Okay. For anybody that needs to drop off, we will be sending the recording. I'm going to try to get through as many of the questions that have come in as possible with the time that we have. But you can see on the slide here that Rajiv has his contact information up here. And Rajiv, I just want to make sure you can share what people can get when they go to that link that's on the screen.
Yeah, so I put together a K-pasa pitch guide. So it'll break down the formula, explain it a little bit more, especially if you didn't have a chance to like take notes during this. Maybe you were eating lunch while watching. So go ahead to that link there, startuphypeman.com/SaaSMAX. You'll be able to download a pitch guide that walks through the formula, gives you some discussion prompts to create your own. And if you have any questions on anything, of course, there's my email address, and definitely connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
And there's also on that link a way to do better demos. And I know we don't have time to go into that today, but wow, it totally changes it with your pitch if you get to the demo phase of how to close things based on that.
Maybe we'll bring Raj back.
There.
Yeah, we'll bring you back for another episode.
Awesome.
All right. I'm going to combine a few of the questions because they're along similar lines. There is quite a bit of concern about channel erosion because there are so many products created by different vendors that do the same thing or are similar to that. So how do you differentiate your pitch from other competitors in the same space without sounding like you're trying to be we're the best when you might be pitching to somebody who's been with a vendor for a long time?
Good question. I think it comes back to, if you focus on the intended audience, you don't necessarily have to worry so much about competitive potential partners. So if you really dial in on problem set that the audience experiences, it kind of puts a person in a mode of like, oh wow, they really get me. I should talk to them because they get me. They understand what my customers are going through, and they understand my relationship with my customers. So literally just getting in that mindset again, that entertainer mindset, where you think about audience point of view, you don't have to worry so much about other people who are pitching them as well. And to use the entertainer analogy, there's a reason why Taylor Swift and Beyonce both exist, because they both do a really good job of connecting with their audience, even though they both sell music and they both sell out stages.
That's a great example, which leads into, this was an interesting slant of a question. At least I think it was. I'll be curious what you and Dina think about this. How do I tell my company story in a way that makes my customer want a partnership, not a client?
How do I tell my company story in a way that makes so like their end customer, instead of making them...
They want to be a partner with them in a very symbiotic relationship, not just, oh, I'm just selling this.
Yeah. So you've got to change what your offer is, right? So the offer language needs to reference partnership as opposed to customership. That's not a word. Client-dom is not a word, but you need to be focusing the offer better, and then also look at when you're in conversation with them, architect a story that talks about the market forces at play for the both of you and how that's driving people to create partnerships that help both of you. And ultimately what you have for them is a partnership that could help both of you. So there's a story arc there about, hey, here's the way things are today. Here's what that's causing. Here's what we can do about it, which is different than here's your problem. Here's what you're lacking relative to like, this buying our software. And here's why we should sell to you.
Okay. And that's pretty much it on the question. Since we're reaching the end of our time, I'd like to give both you, Rajiv, and Dina an opportunity to have a last thought.
Dina, you want to kick off or you want to send it to me?
Well, my last thought is I hadn't really mentioned our special offer, which is that for those of you who are channel chiefs and channel sales executives, if you want to send us the URLs of your best partners, up to 20 of them, we will do profiles and send you a PDF of the top attributes that they have, so that you can perhaps test the waters and see what you learn about them that you may not have realized that existed about them. So, send it to partneroptimizer@SaaSMAX.com and mention this event, and we'd be happy to go through that with you. And Raj, how about you?
On my end, I think kind of from top to bottom, whether it's your initial outreach or let's say they want to meet with you and now you're having to actually do a more like structured like pitch of this is why you should partner with us, really consider how do I, like wherever you're at in that funnel, how do I make life easier for them? Because I think a lot of times what we look at is, well, how do I make it as easy as possible on me? But remove your priorities from the equation for a moment and think about and really act on how do I make life easier from them, all the way to how we ask them to pitch the product, the collateral we give them, right? Those are all ways, instead of thinking about how do I make it as contactless as possible for us, so that way it just executes on autopilot, really ask, how do I set them up to be successful? Because if they are successful, you will be successful.
I love that. Some key takeaways I took from what you both have talked about today is, number one, be really clear about your ideal partner characteristics. Know them pretty cold as to what they are. And then when you're going to pitch them, I love the que pasa. I think that is just really wonderful. But have everybody be saying the same thing. You can use your own style perhaps, right, Rajiv, in there, because every salesperson, every channel person has a slightly different style, but it needs to be the same messaging that's going out, and the focus needs to be not on you, but on them, because you're helping them solve their problems. I love that, and both offers are exceptional. We have several people who have put in the question pane they want to get more information on both things, so I think that's a success. And I think the compelling product story that you shared with us is so critical to make sure you've got that. And I know you're there to help people as well if they need assistance with that. We do have a short survey when the webinar ends, everybody. So if you could please just answer those 3 short questions, that would help us. And if you want to be connected to Rajiv, to SaaSMAX, to help you get your 20 partner profiles and to get any other questions answered, we are here for you. So thank you both for your excellence today. I really, really appreciate it. I love getting to ask people who have such great insights questions.
And Laura, thank you for your participation in hosting us, because you bring a great perspective as the partner. I've been both on the partner side and the vendor side, and then representing vendors to partners. And I know sometimes it's so easy to get caught up as the vendor in us, rather than think about what's in it for the partner, what you might be interrupting in that partner's day at the time that you reach out to them, and what's most concerning to them. So your continual bringing us back to that conversation is critical. And Raj's whole message around being a superhero and knowing what your superpowers are to the partner, critical. So thank you guys. This was a lot of fun, and stay tuned, SaaSMAX friends, for future events. Hopefully one of them will include Raj talking about how to do a great demo. And if you have other suggestions and ideas for us to of things that we should bring to you, let us know. All right.
Have a great day,
Appreciate
everyone.
y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye. Thanks, everyone.